Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Nikki Kinzer.
Here I am. Hello, Pete Wright.
Hello, Nikki Kinzer.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It was cool this morning, and now I feel like I'm bundled up too much. We're in that stage of the summer where the mornings start at like 40 and it's too cold, and now already just a couple of hours later it's 71 and now I'm too hot.
Yeah,
and that is sort of my world right now. But it is represented in the weather, but it also just so happens to be
your life.
My life.
You're cold and then you're hot and then you're cold.
I'm moving fast, then I'm moving slow. I'm looking forward to starting to slow down a little bit more this summer, and we're gonna start with that by oh man, I love this. I love and see, here you go. I love and I hate the topic that you have selected for us today, and I have been rat-holing on it for the last 24 hours. And so I can't wait to talk about it. But before we do that, head over to TakeControlADHD.com. You can get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list and get an email each time a new episode is released. You can connect with us on Twitter and Facebook at TakeControlADHD. And if we have ever touched you in the last however many years that we have been doing this show, if you've ever learned something that has changed your life, we encourage you to consider supporting us directly at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. That is a great place to help us keep going, to help sustain the show. It is listener-funded podcasting. That's what this is. And with every new member who supports us, we're able to continue to do new things. So we appreciate you considering, for just a couple of bucks a month, you can help us support the work that we're doing here to continue to do the show and do more great things that we're very excited to do. So thank you, everybody. Now, Nikki,
yes.
We're still in the enrollment cycle here for coaching.
It is so exciting. It's wonderful. So I've had some great, I've had people already enroll and, gosh, kudos to these folks who have ADHD, who enrolled not only like early, but super early. So I'm very excited about these groups. I want to I want to continue like creating them to grow. So I want to tell people group coaching is still available. The deadline is not until the end of June, and the groups themselves will start after the July 4th, so it'll be the week of July 9th. And I have 3 sessions that are available right now that you can choose from. It is kind of first come, first serve. So if you are interested in doing this, I definitely recommend going in and signing up for your first choice, your second choice, because there are 3 different sessions, and I'm going to do my best to make sure people get into their first choice. But this
look,
is the thing.
If you've been sitting on your hands because you think, well, everybody who's going to sign up has ADHD and they're waiting till the last minute. That's not a good plan, because there are people who are industrious
jumping
out
on
there.
this. Yeah. I mean, they're jumping on this. And so, I definitely say don't procrastinate on this. And I got to tell you, I had this like, what would you call it? I guess it's an aha moment. I had a meeting with my current group, this last week, and I was asking them, how they were feeling about where we were going and, what they were learning from the course and everything. And, we had this wonderful, great discussion between what a goal is and what that means.
Oh, okay.
And there were some people that were feeling a little disappointed because they weren't getting the goals done that they initially thought they were going to get done. And when we started dissecting the word of goal, it was really interesting because one gal was saying, in fact, she's definitely a friend of the show, and I know she won't care that I say this. Rachel had mentioned that, a goal feels like you have to set it, you have to act on it, and then you have to finish it. And it's just this like concrete thing that if you don't finish it, you didn't succeed. And that's where this pressure comes of being disappointed that you didn't do this. So we started talking about how can we reframe that? How can we kind of change that shift, change the mindset around it.
Yeah.
And So after some conversation and thinking on my part, I was like, focus. We're going to change this to just what is your focus for the week? Because the focus doesn't necessarily have to have an outcome. It's something you're working on. It's something you're striving for. It's something that you're making progress on. And it feels softer. It feels like there's more movement because you're not getting frozen with overwhelm or disappointment or shame or all of these different things that can happen. And so I am taking their feedback, and man, Pete, I am running with it. And I am definitely changing sort of the framework of the future groups and what I have left with these folks that are just wonderful. And I have learned so much from them. Yes, it's called an accountability group, but I may even change that at some point, because it really is just about, connecting with people and sharing your story and what you're focusing on, what you need help with, what your celebrations are. And, it's just, I could go on and on, but
that's awesome. Look
isn't
at you.
that great?
Yeah. That's great. What a great addition.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, yes. So that's it. So please, come join us. Come join us. It's fun. Yeah.
All right. There you go. Clock is ticking.
Okay.
Now, let's talk about our show for today. Where did this come from?
This came from a client this week, and oh man, I get questions asked of me all the time.
Sure.
Right? I mean, you're coaching, I'm asking questions, they're asking me questions. And she says, I have this question. And I said, okay, great. Not having any idea what it was going to be. And she says, how can I tell the difference between if I'm just making an excuse or if I really have a valid reason on why I'm not doing something?
Oh my God.
Well, that was what I was saying inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was just like, oh, and that's kind of what I did. I gasped and I said, wow. And I said, one of the reasons I love coaching with you. And she said, why? And she goes, because you challenge me. I'm like, that is a great question. And it's a deep question. And there's a lot of layers to it.
Truly. Well, and the layers come because it is such, those two words, there's such nuance of context and of language and I mean the perils of the English language that make it hard for us to peel these things apart. And how is it that we might contextually be able to understand the difference of these things when the dictionary doesn't do a very good job of separating what these things are? I even went to the dictionary and listened to this.
I see that in the notes.
No, it's not good. No, the dictionary is terrible. Thank you for nothing, dictionary. Nothing. Look, nothing. So let's start with excuse. Excuse. A reason or explanation. This is Oxford English, right? OED. A reason or explanation put forward to defend or justify a fault or offense. Example, there can be no possible excuse for any further delay. No one will have the excuse that they didn't know. Okay? A reason put forward to conceal the real reason for an action, a pretext. When the rain started, he used it as an excuse to leave early. Okay, that's excuse. Now, reason, a cause, explanation, or justification for an action or event. Example, the minister resigned for personal reasons. It is hard to know for the simple reason that few records survive. Good or obvious cause to do something, we have a reason to celebrate, or in logic, a premise of an argument in support of a belief, especially a minor premise when given after a conclusion. So listen to that. Excuse has the words reason, explanation, and justify in the definition. Right. Reason has the words explanation, justification, and reasons in the definition. Come on, dictionary.
Wow.
This is why you have no friends at parties. Look,
no kidding.
I think it comes down to this, and I think when we get into some of the to the logic, I think we actually get better. We get a sort of a better sense of why these words are so challenging. So when I look at an excuse in the dictionary, a reason put forward to conceal the real reason for an action, and then the logical definition of reason, a premise of an argument in support of a belief, especially a minor premise when given after a conclusion. I think we get closer to understanding why these two words are hard, and why they're, it's so easy to connect to them emotionally.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
well, especially with the excuse, when you reread that and you're looking at a reason put forward to conceal the real reason for an action. So it is sort of like you're kind of hiding something.
Right. And
else.
Reason, you've added a level of retraceability, right? I have an experience or a belief, and I've tied that to observable fact, right? That's the reason is it is a premise of an argument, something that I can retrace my belief to that causes me to believe a certain way. And so those things those make sense. The reason I didn't go for a run this morning is because, it turns out I had to take my son to school, and I normally don't have to do that. And it was a surprise change of events. I can retrace that to a change of events that affected my schedule. The excuse would be, I didn't run this morning, because even though I had time, I didn't run because I had to take my son to school, when the real reason is I just ate 6 Krispy Kremes and I'm so sick. I can't move my body. That's the excuse that I'm concealing the real reason for.
On a side note, I just have to tell you, Krispy Kremes are like my favorite donut ever.
It's the worst ever. It's the Jason Mraz of donuts.
It is. Yeah, it is. So I love Krispy Kreme donuts. So anyway, side note.
And you know what, Krispy Kreme, if you're listening, we are accepting any and all sponsorships, and you're welcome to that tagline. Either Krispy Kreme or Jason Mraz Incorporated. I encourage you to use that.
No, people listening aren't going to understand why all of a sudden you threw Jason Mraz in there. They're going to be like, why?
Those people should support us on Patreon, and then they would know all the jokes.
You know why? Yeah. I feel obligated to kind of explain a little bit why you're putting Jason Mraz in there.
I don't think you should.
Okay.
Nope. Move along.
Join Patreon and you'll know why.
So let's get into the ADHD. Let's get into the ADHD stuff here.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because when I was talking to her, the first kind of the first thing I said was my own personal experience, how I defined it. And it was very similar to what you were just talking about with running. And it's with exercise because, my intention every day is to exercise. It's such a good intention. I think about it all the time, and I think about, what I'll do, and I'm going to start small, and, all of these things that I tell everybody else I'm going to do myself. And, I think that the excuse for me is if I was to say I just didn't have time to do it this morning, that's an excuse. I mean, it really is just an excuse because I did have time. Like you, I had to take my kids. I had to make sure that they got ready and got to school today because my husband's not here this morning. But I got up in plenty of time to be able to do the 10 minutes of exercise that I had planned to do, and still have gotten everything done. I just chose not to do it. I just didn't want to do it. And I thought, well, I'll do it later. And that's kind of the, continued pattern that I've been finding myself in. So to me, that's definitely, I feel like the little person in me, that little voice in me knows I'm kind of just making an excuse. The reason I feel it's a more valid reason if I woke up and my back was really hurting, or I really still didn't feel well because I didn't feel well yesterday, and I feel better now, but I could somehow make myself feel bad.
You could, yeah. And let me say, if you're living with ADHD, you are very effective at that.
Yeah. So I could say, well, yesterday I didn't feel very well, so it wouldn't be a great idea for me to be physical today.
Oh, you don't want to push it? No, you got to take it easy.
Yeah, I got to take it easy. But to me, that still feels like an excuse, right? Because I really do feel better. But if I had a broken leg or a broken arm or something like that, then obviously that's a valid reason. So that's a very concrete example, but I think it gets a lot blurrier when, your intentions are to work on a project and you're working on everything else but that project. And are you making an excuse, or is it a valid reason? And that's really the point that she was getting to, is how can you tell How do you know? Yeah. So before I kind of go into my coach's mode, I'm curious from you. I mean, I know this resonated with you. So what are your thoughts? Can you recognize when you're kind of just making excuses up?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the challenge, right? It is both that I can see now when because it's a mental exercise, right? It takes that sort of intellectual will to be able to step outside of yourself, that executive functioning skill to step outside of yourself and say, look, I have done everything that I can to recognize my own patterns, and it's hard to do that. And we've been practicing doing that. I've been practicing doing that as long as we've been doing this show. And so I feel like I have a little bit of an affinity to it, but it's hard to do. It's hard to do when you're in the middle of it. And I think going through, even using the definition that we talked about, right? Are you concealing something? Are you able to look honestly at the what is truth and fact, like living in truth and fact? As our friend Michelle Chalfant says, if we're able to live inside of truth and fact, we can pull apart when we have an excuse or a reason every single time, right? Because we'll know immediately if there's a second layer. And that second layer is the reason. The first layer is the excuse. If there's only one layer, it's just a reason. Anything outside of that is excuses to support a change that or something that you're not willing to do. So,
okay, so you need to repeat that again, because I started following you, and then I want to make sure that I'm clarified. So what she's saying is that if there's two layers, then
well, she's not saying that. I'm saying that. She's saying what is truth and fact, right? If you can sit back and observe, like today, the truth and fact is I had time to exercise. I did not exercise, and I said that it was because I had to take my son to school. But I was concealing the fact that I ate 6 Krispy Kreme donuts, and I feel too sick to do it. Now, I did not eat 6 Krispy Kreme donuts. That's not actually truth and fact. The truth and fact is that I had time to exercise and normally do have time to exercise. But today I found out too late that my son needed a ride to school, and I did not have time to exercise anymore, right? So there's only one reason. There's only one layer to that onion, right? It's just the reason. I didn't exercise because I didn't have time. Tomorrow, if I find out in advance whether or not I need to take my son to school, I'll know if I'm going to have to make an excuse or if I actually won't have time to exercise again.
Right.
You see what I mean? Does that make sense?
I do see what you're saying. Right. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I think living in truth and fact is one of the things that can really help you pull apart what this is. And not only does it help us get outside of our own heads, right, to challenge the stories and assumptions that we tell ourselves, the stories we make up to justify the world we live in, but if you stop and say, what is truth and fact, usually there are only 1 or 2 data points that you can observe, like the data points of, I ran out of time today because I have to do the drive, or, just to explain what you see. If you just limit to what you see, what you feel, what you can touch, and I've mentioned this on the show before, but an old therapist of mine said, your power ends with your skin, right? The things you can control are only the things you can touch, and that's the extent that you can exercise your will in the world. So, if you really simplify that line of thinking and practice every day. Today I'm going to live in truth and fact. Today I'm just going to practice what I observe. I think you're at least for me, I'm able to recognize when I am living in excuse mode. And I have more to say on that, but I want to get some coaching out of you.
Well, I think in this particular conversation and I think this is probably where I would go with most people, is figuring out, what are you avoiding? Because if you are making an excuse, so we've already kind of determined that there's some excuses going on here, right, in this situation. So we've determined that we're making some excuses. So what is it that we're avoiding? And digging into, the connection between what makes this matter to you. Because if there's a lack of connection or a lack of meaning of why this needs to be done or why you need to exercise, if you really don't feel like it means anything, or you're really like only doing it for other people and you're not doing it for yourself, you're missing that connection, then you're going to keep avoiding it. So there's a little bit of figuring out what it is you're avoiding, What's making you avoid that? What does it matter to you? Like reliving that connection, or evaluating what makes that matter to you. And, what do we need to do to break through to that? Right. Because if we keep avoiding something, it's just going to keep not being done. So depending on how important it is and what that connection is, what do you need to do? So it could be small increments of time, working on something for just 5 or 10 minutes instead of for 2 hours. It could be that you need to keep breaking it down. Something that you said a while back that really resonated with me is when you see a task that keeps getting moved to the next day, to the next day, to the next day, something needs to be broken down in that task. Something's clogging it. Something's not working. So do you have to, break it down more? In this situation, I think that getting some kind of body double help would have helped her. If you're really having a difficult time getting something done, who can come in and actually be a support system for you and be there while you're doing that task and helping you, get through that. So having a friend, a family member, a coworker, your coach, whatever it is, but getting that extra support. So in the coaching realm, it's really identifying, what are you avoiding? How do you make that connection again of why and what makes it matter? And then what do you have to do to keep it important? What's the action step that you need to do to break through? Right. And that's where the small increments of time and strategies kind of come in.
Yeah. Now, the thing I wanted to bring up is that next layer, the response to that, being able to recognize that you're living in excuse mode.
Yeah.
And that for me is where it hurts. That for me is where I get really stuck in myself, because once you're able to see clearly, I'm living in an excuse. I chose to eat poorly and now I'm sick. Now you have to live with the fact, you have to make a choice about whether or not you're going to continue to hide it from yourself and your accountability partner and whatever. And you're going to have to choose whether it's worth living with the repercussions of feeling like of self-judgment and, self-loathing and anxiety and depression that can come along with that. And that's the part that hurts me more than anything else is once I sort of feel like I'm adept at recognizing I'm living in an excuse mode, then I find my brain jumps in, hoops trying to figure out how I can either maintain the illusion or come clean. And that's where the real work comes in of living a healthy life and living free of excuses.
So this hits so home. I mean, it's so, when you're saying that, it's like, yeah, this is hard because for me on a personal level, I'm dealing with stuff like I can't make these excuses anymore. And especially when it comes to exercise, and I can laugh about it and, my intention is always really good, but I'm right where you just explained. It's like, I know, this is not helping me and I know it's making things worse. And, just in the last couple of days doing my own research on how to get myself out of this funk and reaching out and getting help, on how to process this and get through why am I not making this a priority? Why am I not making this a bigger issue than it is? And that's a hard place to be. So that's a very personal thing I just shared, but it's a hard place to be. And so, there you go. Whoa, that took a turn.
Well, it's very real, and that's why
it is real. I mean,
this whole thing really resonates with me because I feel like I've been living with exactly that battle for a long, long time, and so it's just that it becomes too easy to habituate lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Lying to myself.
It takes so much energy. And that's where I'm at is I am so tired. I'm just so tired of the energy that I have to put out every single day. And it's like, okay, why is that so tiring to me? Yeah. And then, when you look up how do you get out of depression, how do you deal with anxiety? Of course, when you get, I just looked at an article about getting out, the 10 steps on getting out of depression. And it's like, exercise, it's all this stuff that you're supposed to do, but yet I can't find 10 minutes in my day to to do it, even though I know it's going to make me feel better. So it's getting over that hump of everything that you need to do to make you feel better is everything you don't want to do. And that's tough. And that's why I'm personally reaching out for help, because I need help. I need somebody to help me get those pieces together. It's weird. So,
well, it's weird. And that this is the other reason this resonates, because you don't live with ADHD, and this is still a function of anxiety, right? And
oh, totally. Yeah.
Because those things tend to be kind of together. And I know it certainly is for me, but I think when you already feel separate, right? When you already feel, we've already discussed that ADHD is an issue, and anxiety are conditions of exclusion, right? You feel isolated as a result of those conditions, that once you allow yourself to climb inside your own head and live there in a negative space for too long, it's a deflationary spiral, right? You just go down and down and down. And so it's so hard. We talked, I think it was just last week or 2 weeks ago or something, about how hard it is to reach out for help, to connect with others, to have those connections to support you when you don't have the strength to do it.
Right.
It's the same. It's the same thing with meds, right? You take your meds and you feel like, oh, these meds are making me strong enough to feel like I don't need meds anymore. So you stop taking the meds, and then you're on a cycle of self-medicating that is not healthy. So it's,
there's a commercial that just gets me every single time I hear it. It's something like, well, I'm on antidepressant medication. Why do I still feel depressed? And I'm like, oh, that hits home. Yeah. But yet it's another drug that they're selling. Yeah, so it's like, right. Well, I don't necessarily want to do that either. But I do understand being on an antidepressant, but still feeling depressed, still feeling low. And so it's like, okay, there's more pieces to this puzzle that I need to figure out.
There is one of the, I am paralyzingly needle phobic. I've talked about that on the show, right? Have I talked about that?
No, but I can relate.
So I
don't really like needles.
I deal with I deal very personally with it. Like, it's needle phobia it's not just a thing that I am that I don't like needles. When a needle comes close to me, particularly close to my arm, I pass out. I go through this vasovagal syncope and I pass out. It's happened all my life. Even as an adult, I pass out. So I have all of these strategies around trying to, you squeeze like when you sit down to get blood drawn, you squeeze your legs, you flex your legs to pump blood up to your heart, right? You do all these things to keep your blood pressure up so that you don't pass out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I have this horrible embarrassing story where the life insurance person came to our house to do a blood draw for our life insurance years ago, and I passed out in my own kitchen, and they laid me down on my couch, and she had to do my blood draw with an infant needle, the very, very tiniest hair needle. Yeah. So now, that is the most fun story that my kids tell. Oh, Dad, tell them the story about the
infant needle. Yeah.
But this is where this comes back to me, and why this is so hard. I didn't go to the dentist for 18 years. Right. I got really lucky that, I just took care of my teeth and I did okay. My teeth are not in great shape, but I'm fine.
They're okay. Yeah.
But that is one of the conditions of severe needle phobia, or needle phobia that's associated with a syncope. And is that people don't go to the doctor, right? Until it gets to the point where there is a larger, more risky condition that comes into your life that you have to deal with that involves needles, right?
Right.
And so the biggest of the issues, and one of the great case studies has been studied on this, is people who have severe syncope with needle phobia, and then they get cancer and have to go through chemotherapy, which involves needles. Right?
Lots of needles,
lots and lots of needles. And so they have to go through the exposure therapy of getting over that, because they have reached this point of having to face something else that's bigger. And that is that's a thing that's really terrifying, because it forces you to face something that you don't want to face. But for me, it's also it's similar with my own numbers. My triglycerides, I've been told I'm a walking heart attack, and so at some point, that sinks in, and I have to make changes in my life around exercise and food because it's a bigger issue Right. Now it's involving my life. It's not just involving how I feel day to day. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I totally know what you mean. Yeah. So. And I'm kind of at that cusp where the bad thing hasn't happened yet, but just like what your doctor told you, I know it's there. It's lingering there. And so if I don't get it under control, I very well could get diabetes. I very well could have heart disease. I very well could be in that category. And so, I guess that's a win for me, is being aware that that's what I'm trying to prevent before it gets there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so it's a big issue, and I don't know that there are any real clear answers for sure. But I really think coming back to this idea of, can you retrace, back to excuses versus reasons? If you can retrace, your experience to truth and fact, if you can retrace your experience, to what you observe, then you'll at least be able to build the muscle of learning to see when you're making excuses. And it's hard to do, and it's okay to screw up.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. We all do.
Yeah.
But the one day that we can, follow through on what our intentions are, that's a good day too.
That's right.
Something to celebrate.
Right.
Yeah.
Something to celebrate. No, good topic. And thanks for totally messing with my last 24 hours.
I know. I'm going to continue to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next week and the week after that, it's going to be Thursday recording instead of Friday.
And then we get a couple of weeks off, and we appreciate that. So get ready. And we should say, as a plug, not this coming week, but the week after, we want to keep pushing those success stories. So if you haven't sent them in yet, definitely do that. We want to hear those stories. We want to get them out in the feed. We want to hear your stories. And you know what? If you want to just record an audio clip, feel free to do that. If you know how, record us in voice memos or whatever tool you want to do it. Send us an email with an attachment, and we'll take it. And you can do that to you just send it to the info address, right?
Yes.
info@takecontroladhd.com. Please do it.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Please.
We'd like to hear your voices, your beautiful, beautiful voices, the dulcet tones of the listeners of Taking Control of the ADHD podcast. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next Thursday, for anybody joining us in the live stream, right here on Taking Control of the ADHD podcast.